Well, I'd like to welcome you all here to the Blue Earth County Board of Commissioners. Today is October 23rd, and I'd like to ask everybody to stand and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So our routine here, we got to look at the agenda. Bob, is it?
Mr. Chair, we do have two changes to the agenda this morning.
Okay.
One is a revised upcoming meetings list that has been handed out to you. We did add a meeting on October 30th for the Dublin Crossings ribbon cutting, since the county contributed to that affordable housing unit. So wanted to make the board aware of that. And then we'd also like to remove item number 5 on the packet, the bills for the weeks of October 4th and October 11th. We inadvertently failed to include the detail, and so we'll deal with that at our next meeting.
So we'll just add that to the next meeting, probably?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll move the agenda with changes.
Second. Okay, we've got a motion for approval and a second. All those in favor, or is there any more discussion about that first? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. All right, well, our first item of business here is our planning and zoning with, who do we have here? George and Aaron? Come on, gentlemen. Morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Morning. Gonna dive right in. I remember most of our meetings over all these years, you guys used to be further down on the agenda. Yeah, now we got you right in front. Okay, so we've got PC 21-18 for our first item. And Aaron, are you going to
Yes, sir.
present? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. PC 21-18 is a request from Tom Lyons for review and approval of a preliminary plat of the Lyons subdivision, a subdivision plat consisting of one lot. This portion of the property is zoned rural town site. It is also within the Shoreland Overlay District of Lake Ballantine and the Urban Fringe Overlay District of the City of Madison Lake. The proposed plat is located in the southeast quarter of the northeast quarter of Section 28, Jamestown Township. Mr. Stubbs presented the staff report. The applicant was present. A neighboring resident expressed his concern with the variance approved by the county's Board of Adjustment to reduce the required buildable area. He also discussed his concern with the existing driveway access easement and asked if an amendment to the maintenance agreement could be imposed. The commission and the neighbor had a lengthy discussion on the access easement and the maintenance of the driveway. The commission acknowledged his concern but advised him that the matter before them was the subdivision plat review. The buildable area reduction was also discussed at length. The discussion included the justification of the variance approval and possible options for future development of the property. Following the discussion, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to forward to the County Board a recommendation of approval based on the findings prepared by staff, and the board action is the resolution.
Okay. So this is PC 21-18 then, a request for preliminary plat of this property, and we're going to open this up for public hearing, and that means we open it up for public comment. So if there's anybody here today that would like to express themselves or ask any questions or any details about this request, please just stand up, give us your name, and go ahead and where you live, I guess would be good to do. So is there somebody here that'd like to get up and...
Good morning, Mr. Chair, as well as the rest of the board.
Morning.
My name is Mark Orger. I live immediately north of this proposed plat, Blue House 61386 235th. Just a couple concerns I have with the proposed plat. The first one is the buildable area. Certainly I understand the setbacks and how the survey was put together and how the buildable area was shown and how it came up to be. But I do have concerns about where it's located just because of the impacts on my property. You know, the area that's shown is essentially at the top of the ravine that's on my property that's experiencing some erosion, and there is water that runs from that property onto mine. And my concern is with development in this spot, there's going to be an increase of rate, volume, and frequency of runoff onto my property that has issues now. It's been terraced up to hold it back, but I just think that with an increase in runoff, there's going to be erosion and damage to my property with that. The second concern I have is the easement access. Right now, I own the entire driveway, and essentially the easement says there's an easement on your driveway, and I'm sure it's just put together to provide easement to the farm piece in the back behind my house, which I have no issues with, but there's nothing in there stating what existing easements and access points are protected, what access points can be proposed and added, and there's nothing with maintenance agreement at all on my driveway. So, that concern brings up the access to the buildable area. They would have to use about 150 feet of my driveway, and there's nothing in place for maintenance or adding new access. And if somebody comes in and develops and builds, you're going to have heavy equipment there. And as it stands now, that's all on my dime to fix. So, my two concerns are financially, I don't feel I should be responsible to pay for the extra erosion and runoff onto my area, and I don't think that I should be responsible for all the additional maintenance costs solely. So those are my two concerns, and certainly appreciate you allowing me to speak today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else here that would like to get up and ask any questions or give any details at all from this request for preliminary plat? I'll ask one more time. Anybody here in the audience that would like to get up and ask any questions or have any comments? All right, Mr. Miller?
Yeah, Mike Miller. Actually, the maintenance agreement or the easement agreement was put in place. There is a house existing on the property already, and that easement agreement was put in place back when that original parcel was sold to a family member. So, the easement is nothing that was new or created. It was there back when the neighbors bought that property. So, there might be some refining they could do with that between the new owners, but it shouldn't be an issue in your decision today. I don't think.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anybody else here that would like to get up and clarify or ask any questions or make a comment in the public? I think we're going to go ahead and close the public portion then and come back, bring it back to the board. So that public hearing portion is closed. So what would we like to do here today? Somebody want to move it or for discussion? Yeah. If we don't move it, then it would just get tabled or something.
That would happen, okay. I'll move it.
You don't want it? All right, we're good.
I'll
Okay.
second it.
Who's got a second?
I did.
Okay. So we've got a motion for approval and a second. Now we can have some discussion and talk about it, I guess. So,
Mr. Chair?
And ask the staff questions too if you have any.
Sure. Mr. Chair, I'll start. I've been involved in this because I'm on the planning and zoning, cut a little piece of it for the Board of Adjustment. Been on the site, seen the site. I understand why they're doing it, and we have to do it, and Aaron's been very accommodating and answering my questions, and from what I understand, Mr. Chair, you've had some questions for Aaron too.
Yeah.
And this is just a preliminary report, so we're going to see this again, in probably December, I would imagine. But I have some serious concern of that red spot. I would just soon see the building be put, or that building envelope be put about where the old building is. That's my biggest concern. I know we can't fix that today, so I am going to support this today because I don't want to stop the process, but we need to try to move that around a little bit or do some other plan if we can, or some other options. I know that no one would probably build that red envelope, but when you look at this, you think that's the only place you can build, is my interpretation of it. So I get a little nervous about that because we work so hard trying to protect these sensitive areas, and I've been very supportive of allowing people to do what they want inside those sensitive areas to a certain extent. So I would just like a little more consideration put to that, and as I said earlier, I will support this today because I think we have one more plat to deal with, and it might be the same thing at the end of the day, but I just ask that we try to make some more adjustments, look at some other options, see what else we can do to get that build print more where the house is currently, or in that general vicinity. And I think a lot of our issues would be resolved with it's not a bluff, from what I understand. It's just a few percent up to being a bluff. So
like
it's
1 or 2% off or something.
It's a very sensitive area. And if someone was, if this does end up passing at the end of the day in December, in our meeting in December, I'm sure our staff would have some say in where this house gets positioned on that parcel or not, or our hands kind of is wide open to whatever they want to do there.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we could certainly make suggestions, but as far as telling a person this is 100% where you are going to put your future development,
we can't.
We don't necessarily have that authority. However, this house being legal non-conforming could always be repaired or replaced in its same 3D footprint, and there are some other options, future development options that would move that buildable area a little further south. But as far as changing it on the plat, we would have to look into it, just because that orange area
is the only space it fits.
Was without future variances or other items. So I don't know that we could change that orange area on the final plat.
Okay. Well, it is a concern of mine, and I'm like, again, I said I'll support it today, but we'll have to have some more discussion about it at the final, and that's what we do. Well, then we should probably even back up just a little further yet, because this got a Board of Adjustment. You need 1 acre developed.
There's a lot of requirements within the ordinance, within the state statutes.
This does have sewer hookup there, so I think that's the only reason, and I can't speak for the Board of Adjustments, but I think that's the only reason why it even got considered, was because they would have never considered this if there wasn't a sewer hookup there. So there is a sewer hookup, that's a good thing, and they allowed it to go down to the 4,000 square feet, which from 40-some thousand square feet, a whole acre. So it was a pretty big reduction.
Yeah.
But that was their decision, and we can't overrule that. So that's out there, and that's fine, because there's other people that want to do this very same thing. So we'll be seeing some more of that stuff going on. But so I guess those are the concerns and questions I have at this point, Mr. Chair. But like I said, this is the preliminary. I'll support it today because I don't want to stop the process, but I will be checking into some stuff and working with staff to try to figure something else out.
I know, I worked with them too. I mean, I went out and met with Mr. Oringer out there and looked at the property, and it looks quite different when you're there as to when you look at just a aerial view. Even with the contour lines and everything, it's really nip and tuck, but you can see where it would fit there. And there's quite a slope. And it is true, I mean, some of the concerns you mentioned, that if they did build right there at that footprint, there would have to be considerable consideration when they come up with a development plan for construction, for a water plan, because on that one side, the north side of the house, it would definitely all run right onto his property. It doesn't go down the hill right next to the house. It goes at an angle, and you can see where that angle would go right into his land. And so there could be some concern there that if I was a landowner, or anybody would be concerned how much water would come off that house. They might have to use gutters and direct the water. There must be some kind of a plan for a water plan, and that's what the county's good at doing. We've got water planners that work with that, and I think that they could probably come up with something. I know that after I walked the whole property, met with Mr. Orger, met with Aaron Stubbs, talked about all these different issues that are to be addressed. The reasons for this is there's certain setbacks that are already expected that whenever you build something new. So they got the road to the south, what's that road called now? It's 235th or something, or the highway to the south?
County Road 187.
187.
Also 235th.
Yeah.
Same thing.
And so you have to have 130 feet, is it?
130.
Setback. And you can request a setback when you build a house there. Let's say you want a 100-foot setback instead of a 130, and I mean, you can't guarantee we'd do that, but we do it quite often if it seems reasonable.
Well, and it's an existing house is my point.
Yeah, there's an existing house, so more than likely there'd have to be some very extenuating circumstances for something like that to not be approved. But we've given those kinds of approvals for building sites throughout the county. And then also there's a setback when you build new from the road that goes in for access, and that's why this orange site was kind of picked. And I was trying to get to the origin as to why did you have to pick that spot? And so after reviewing the whole thing, it looks like, anybody that's going to develop that land, I mean, if they absolutely had to go right to the edge of that thing, they could do it. But you'd have to come up with a water plan, and I don't think they'd be allowed to build there unless they had addressed the water runoff issues. And I did see that there were some concerns from the DNR, about that. I think that's why they didn't really want to push forward with it. In today's world, we do look at hillsides, and even if it doesn't quite meet the requirement as a legal bluff, not very far away, there is a bluff that would be required to have some. It would be different, removing the vegetation and that sort of thing. So after reviewing things with Mr. Orger and with Aaron Stubbs, and believe it or not, I sometimes look at the Board of Adjustments when they come out, and so I think it was late August, I wrote a letter to George and Aaron both, and had a good conversation with George about some of this, trying to wrap my brain around it, because every situation is so individual. You know what I mean? There isn't one that's the same. And so that was almost 2 months ago. I had concerns about this building site. But some of those fears were relieved when I realized that this is simply the division and a preliminary plot. And so they're allowed to do this and to divide out and to make this preliminary plat unless there's something extremely incorrect or improper. And with all the work the staff have put into this and examined the setbacks and examined and communicated with everybody, I support moving forward at least with this preliminary plat. And I think that other issues will come up in the future, and hopefully when it gets down to the point where there's going to be some development, the new landowner or a landowner will have some good meetings with Mr. Orger, and maybe they can work out an agreement on this easement, you know what I mean? Because currently that whole road is owned by Mr. Orger. He maintains and operates that whole road. And it would behoove somebody coming into there that if they're going to utilize that road on a regular basis, whereas it's been more irregular lately, really, with what do you call it, the agriculture. They own 78 acres or whatever it is up there. They go across that road to access their ag land, which isn't as often. But so I would trust that things are good as far as that's in my opinion. As a board member, as a commissioner for Blue Earth County, along with Kip Brunder here, and I haven't heard from the rest of the commissioners, but I trust that things will move forward with this preliminary plat. So.
I agree, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Does anybody have any other comments about this?
Has there been any conversation between the owners about the driveway? Have you sat and talked to each other about how that, how you can work together to get a feasible understanding on who's going to take care of damage, such as if there's construction and, have you talked to each other about that?
Mr. Commissioner, no, we have not. And the reason why we have not is the parcel's being split up for sale.
Yeah.
And it's my understanding that maybe the auction has already taken place. So I don't know who the new owners are.
You don't know. Well,
no, but
could something be put into the agreement on the sale? Maybe I'm asking Mike this. That the new owners would agree to, upon construction, agreed to keep up that road.
I think at this point it would be hard to retroact to go back where the terms of the sale were set.
Yeah.
You understand where I'm coming from, though. I mean,
Change things now, you know, the people that buy it understand that they have an easement on that road. That road was used for access to the existing home that's there now and
For 20 years.
And I would have thought that Mr. Order, when he bought the property behind, would have to consider that that home had either been remodeled or revamped, you know.
Yeah.
And that there was always going to be that existence, as well as there's an agreement on the well.
Okay.
And so the well actually happens to be on this property. And it would be, I would think, obvious that the two neighbors would have to come to some agreements, you know. At present, I believe that Mr. Order is paying for the electricity that pumps the well. But the well is actually located on this property that's proposed to be divided off. I would think any new owner and any neighbor that's there would want to work with Mr. Order. Of course.
You would think.
You know, take care, you know, let's refine the well agreement a little more so that we're paid for half of the, because the way it's set up now,
Yeah.
he's right. That might have been when the easement was put in, it was between two family members, and were things ironed out as far as I think it's probably assumed that the son that bought the property behind the mother, he probably plowed the driveway out for his mother.
Yeah.
And
I know.
I'm sure that and then
Mike.
where they end up putting the house would probably, I would think Mr. Order with the new owner could have discussions with them, and if he was, you know, acceptable to the house, the footprint being closer to the existing footprint from the existing house, I would think anyone who came in, they would probably want to be closer to the lake.
Yeah.
But
Technically, if we keep talking, I wish you'd come up to the mic because we can't hear you very
oh, I'm sorry.
But you can come up to the mic and we can hear you better. Because the reason is we record all
That was probably my fault. I'll take responsibility.
Not probably.
I'll take responsibility for that one.
No, I just think it'd stand to reason that the two owners being neighbors would want to work out refining the well agreement where the well is on Tom Lyons' property now.
Yeah.
The well is located there, and they have it's somewhat of a loose shared agreement, as well as the easement on the road. I mean, when they divided and plotted out for the family member to have that back parcel, I'm sure they didn't parcel it out with the assumption that the son someday could sell that property and all of a sudden gain control of the driveway. The driveway was put in there way before this. The house that Mr. Orger lives in.
Oh, I understand.
Before he built his home there. In the agreement to divide it off, they said, okay, son, you buy it, we'll sell you the driveway and we'll just have an easement to it. Yeah. But refining that agreement, I think, would make all kinds of sense. But the fact is, the agreement's there, and the agreement was put in place so that this property could continue to have access.
Right.
And I would think that whoever bought that property, which happened to be Mr. Orger behind, can't just think that someday that's just going to disappear.
Right.
When he bought the property, he knew there was an easement to that driveway.
Right.
The location, the building site, I think this was done in order to get to the point where we're at now, so that the Lions could take away the financial burden that this property put on them with the sewer system coming in. There was a huge assessment that was put on there, and so this is a way of relieving and getting rid of that.
I see.
That sewer is never going to benefit the farmland, and it only makes sense that it would be for the building site.
I hear you. And Aaron, you had something to say, what Mike just said too. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
You might have something to say.
Commissioner Campbell, at the construction permit phase, staff would just include a couple of different conditions on that permit, that one, the driveway be maintained during construction, and two, that at the conclusion it be returned to the pre-existing condition. So although we don't necessarily have the authority to force the new owners into a maintenance agreement, we as staff could ensure that it at least stays in the pre-existing condition and that there's no negative impact as a result. Correct.
Right.
That's helpful.
Yeah, well, thanks for the comments. Come on up, Mark, if you have just a couple comments too, we'll just move along here as soon as we can.
Yeah, I'm not trying to slow it down, but just a couple of comments, and I'm not trying to argue with Mr. Miller, the Lions or anything, but when I bought the house, there was in the deed and the agreement to the house, the easement was stated as it's a permanent easement for access to the farm field behind the house. I didn't get the actual written agreement and easement until after I purchased it, and it still just says loose agreement. The well agreement's done deal. That just says each person splits the well agreement half price. I mean, that maintenance costs are split, so that's easy. But the actual easement, from what I was told, is an easement to the ag field. And when I bought the house, I even looked at the house up front, and the comments I got back from the realtor at the time, it wasn't Mr. Miller, it was somebody else, but they said the owner would be interested in parceling that house off if the owner was interested in buying it. They said it was non-livable, and the only access was used for the farm field and to get to the shed. So, you know, it's kind of all loosey-goosey still, but there was just a lot of misinformation, and certainly I didn't expect to be standing here 8 months after I bought the house having somebody build 10 feet on top of my ravine and then using my driveway with no strings attached. And I understand that when it moves forward, certainly there could be some discussions and agreements, but we're all sitting here, well, they should do that, they should do that, handshake this, but there's nothing guaranteeing that anything for me is going to be protected. And that's where, I mean, we all know how good handshake agreements work out, so that's my concerns. And again, I'm not trying to point fingers, he said, she said, but that's just the information that I was told. So the legal documents aren't truly defined, and then the word of mouth is, it's just been quite confusing and really nothing.
Okay, thank you so much.
So that's where it came from.
I'd like to ask Pat if he just has any input, our county attorney, Pat McDermott, if you have anything after listening to some of this.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, thank you. I have not reviewed this matter, but I will just remind you to go back to the easement discussion that we had not too long ago, that Mr. Tilges was part of, and when an easement is in place and is it within the scope and purview of the easement, and if this easement has been out there, the law would take the generic look and say, buyer beware. And I think many things that are being discussed here are perhaps moral issues, not legal issues, and from a legal standpoint, if they have complied with the zoning ordinance, if they have complied with everything from a legal standpoint, I don't think you can morally, on an emotional decision basis, make any type of decision. I think some of Mr. Miller's points are very well taken. This has been here. It's been there for quite some time. It would be caveat emptor, buyer beware, and if the parties can't work it out, they have their right to redress and take this matter to the district court.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Pat.
I was just good to get some feedback there, so. Yeah, well, good.
Well, Mr. Chair, if I may, just one more comment.
Commissioner Brunner.
I understand the auction has already happened, and the only concern I have is that the county ends up being the bad guy at the end of the day here, because if it's been sold and they're going to take possession before this is done, could that be problematic for us?
It should not be problematic for the county.
Okay.
Again, if this has gone through the process, government in any way, shape, or form is a process. It has come through the process of planning and zoning. Planning and zoning has recommended and gone forward. And if somebody wants to disagree with the county board, they have their right to sue the county board in district court. But I think just from an unemotional standpoint, looking at this from a pure legal standpoint, obviously I can research the matter further if you want, but just from a generic overview, this has been in place. The property was there. The easement was there. If it goes outside the scope of the easement, if somebody feels that they've been damaged as a result of the use of the easement in the future, they again have their right to redress in district court.
Okay, that's good clarification on that, Pat, but I'm more interested in the plat. You know, the plat has not had the final approval on it. So if it's been sold and they close before we do the final approval, and for some reason the wheels come off it and we don't approve it, where does that leave us as the county? I mean,
well, again,
they got new owners. Again, it's a he said, she said.
Right, and that is again, you have to take a snapshot of what was there, and if this meets the requirements for the final plat, and they're basically minimum standards that the government sets forth of this is what you need to do to plat this property, and if that minimum standard has been met, there is really, if you believe, and legally from a standpoint, if it's been legally set, and those requirements have been met, then you would have to have some basis to deny that plat.
But if we
Again-
did deny it, at the end of the day, if we did deny it, it's the new owner's responsibility to take us to court. Would that be a?
Well, I don't want to get into who's going to take who to court, because it's my obligation to represent the best interests of Blue Earth County.
Yeah. I'm just, you know, the things that are going on, I'd like to know, I don't want the county end up being the bad guy here at the end of the day. We're trying to help them make this property developable, then they sell it, it's not approved, and for some reason we don't approve it, and it probably ends up being more of a time frame thing than a total denial, but you know, what responsibility do we have?
I understand that, and again, I think that this comes down to a moral decision versus a legal decision. And from a legal standpoint, again, if these minimum requirements have been met, you have to come up with a reason legally to deny that plat. And again, moving forward, if there's issues with respect to this, if it's outside of the purview and scope, I've heard a couple of different versions on what the easement is, or should have been, or was, or thought to be. And to me, that shouldn't factor into your decision on whether this is legally allowed under the ordinances of Blue Earth County.
Okay. Thank you, Pat. I don't have any other questions or comments at this time, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, great. There are a lot of little details with that, isn't there?
Well, that's the beauty of this one. We have another month and a half to sort through it.
Yeah, we can
It'll be
still
back
go
for a final.
for the final.
Just
Yeah.
new stuff. I thought we were kind of at the point where we had all the new stuff, but we got some new stuff today again, so we'll work through it.
Yeah, and we didn't bring out all the little details. You know, there's a lot of details of this. Like if somebody, let's just say I buy the lot, you know, and I decide I want to put a driveway off as you come in instead of going across, you know, the whole driveway. That changes the whole picture too. So I might decide to put my own driveway in back and put the house kind of, get permission to put it where I want, but ask for a little small setback or something from the county and see if they might say yes. And so then I decide to put my driveway maybe not too far off of this one, but my own driveway, you know, and that changes the setbacks a little bit. It changes everything about where the house goes. You know, it does a lot. It changes everything. So it gets drilled down more towards the construction phase and getting permission to build a structure that you know, in the future. Now today we're more or less dealing with just simply the preliminary plat, and it sounds like we've covered all of the legal requirements, the base minimum. And does it make sense completely? Maybe not to everybody, but you know, it's somebody can at least buy this piece of property and have it divided off. And that's what I think we're here today, more or less looking at. Am I correct? Does that sound correct?
No.
And there's a lot of options in the future. You know, they can tear down the house and put it right there, or they can, you know, get permission to move that footprint around when it gets drilled down to that point. But that's something we can't predict into the future. Somebody might buy this piece of property and just fix up the old house. I mean, I don't know. You know, we don't know.
Yep.
So, okay. Are we ready to move forward with the
Yes.
vote?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Understood.
So we've got a motion for approval and a second. Let's see, who was that? Will, did you move?
I made the motion.
And Vance, I think, or who was
Seconded.
made the second? Is there any more discussion on this then, today? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, everybody, for sharing your concerns and your input on this preliminary plat. Okay, so we've got to move on to the second PC item here with planning and zoning. And who's going to help us with this one?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. PC 22-18 is a request from SN Mankato LLC and WW Land Company LLC. It is a request for review and approval of a conditional use permit to allow cutting and filling in a bluff impact zone as part of a ravine stabilization project. The property is zoned highway business and is within the Urban Fringe Overlay District of the City of Mankato. The site is located in the southeast corner of the southwest quarter of the northeast quarter of Section 19 South Bend Township. Mr. Leary presented the staff report. The applicants were present and had no initial comment. There was little discussion by the Planning Commission and no additional public comments. Following the discussion, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to forward to the County Board a recommendation of approval based on the findings prepared by staff. The board action is a resolution. Mr. Chairman, since this time, The applicant has contacted me, and the project right now includes the back slope would be an earthen material and covered with vegetation. I looked around, the applicant is not here. I wish they would be here to comment further on this, but he has an access to a supply of limestone riprap, and so to use that instead of an earthen material for this back slope. And so I contacted the DNR, Dan Girolamo, the area hydrologist, and asked him by email if he had any concerns with the use of rock riprap. The concern of the DNR on other rock riprap projects using limestone is the quality of the riprap and if it has many fines in it. And
Fines
so,
meaning smaller pieces.
Right, instead of legitimate rock riprap. And so the DNR has reviewed the proposal. They're okay with the use of limestone riprap, provided the quality of the riprap is reviewed. The issue, again, is with the fines. So if this project has approval or is favorable with the county board, I would ask that a condition be added that the project be re-engineered for the use of the limestone rock riprap.
And you feel that's necessary because I do see it says filling, definitions and word usage, it says fillings means any soil, earth, sand, gravel, rock, or similar material deposited, placed, or pushed. I mean, do we need to add that, you think, or?
The condition?
Yeah.
I would ask that it be added. That way the engineer who has designed this project as is has a chance to review that source of riprap, limestone riprap, and determine that it is adequate quality to use for this project.
Okay. All right, yeah. So if we make a motion on this, then you're asking that we just put that on as a stipulation?
Public hearing, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I just wanted to get it clarified.
Yes, so that condition is not in the
just add one
resolution
more.
that you have.
Okay.
It would be
All
added
right.
to that.
All right, sounds good. So,
That way we can keep the project moving forward without coming back to us.
One last thing, I talked briefly with Ryan Tilgis, the county highway engineer, prior to this, and he thought that would be a wise plan to have that re-engineered.
okay, and Ryan's here too. So I'll open this up for public comment next, or you want to just discuss it some more first?
I have no further discussion.
Okay. So this is a public hearing for PC 22-18 for trying to, I guess, alleviate some of the erosion that's going on a ravine front, kind of an inlet area, really, off of a large parking area that has basically I think it's an impervious surface because it's a parking lot basically. It's been covered with gravel and sand and things over the years, and so there's runoff going into this ravine. And is there anybody here in the audience today that would like to get up and ask some questions or make some comments about PC 22-18, along with the caveat that we would add the use of qualified riprap? Is there anybody here that would like to make a comment? I think we waited long enough, so I'm going to close the public portion of the hearing and bring it back to the board for action and discussion.
I'll move approval of staff recommendations in the addition of the extra condition.
All right, we've got a motion for approval from Mr. Brunder with the addition of the one condition of using qualified,
And then be re-engineered.
be re-engineered with that riprap. And then Commissioner Purvis seconded that. Can we make sure that's added on there then, Jesse? Now we can open this up for discussion.
I don't have any comments, Mr. Chair.
I don't either. It seemed pretty straightforward to me. I like your recommendation, George.
Good project.
Yeah, there's a lot of these things around our county, and the one question that we always ask at these public hearings, or at least in our ordinances, is will this have an impact on the water quality, of the county? And I know that just below this, quite a ways down, I don't know how many hundreds of feet or thousands of feet it is, it connects up somehow, the runoff connects up with the stream that goes into our state park.
Minneopa Creek.
Minneopa Creek.
1,700 feet away.
1,700 feet, thank you.
And that was, that information was provided to the DNR when I asked him about the use of.
So he knew
limestone
that,
riprap.
yeah, I'm sure. And he's okay with that then, as far as the water quality. What I always look at when we're doing a project is, can we make the water quality even better?
Right.
And so this probably may increase the water quality, because it's going to have this, it'll reduce any further erosion.
That's the intent of the project, yes.
And they don't have any plans to change the parking surface at all by putting blacktop or by putting, drainage pipes in that go extend way out into the parking area? Or, I mean, do you know what the plan was with that?
Nothing has been proposed in blacktop and nothing on the additional tile lines either.
Okay.
There is some additional gravel parking area that was shown on the site plan that is part of this project.
It is?
Yes.
So they're adding more parking?
Right, to maybe the southwest corner of that property.
Do you know if that drains into this ravine?
It does.
It does?
It will.
Okay, because I just questioned that, because it says that in the after I read the P&Z, it said it will not, there won't be an increase of drainage into this site. So does that consider that portion then that's going into there?
The engineer it's on engineered plans, so I'm sure that he took that into account for his engineering design.
Okay, and this whole packet on this particular project went to the DNR?
No, it
didn't?
because it's outside of shoreline.
Okay.
And so
Yeah.
the project initially did not go to the DNR for review.
Okay.
But that proposed change, the use of limestone riprap versus earthen material,
Yeah.
was sent to the DNR for review.
Okay.
Only because of its possible impact on Minneopa Creek.
And the other question I had, which I didn't get a chance to ask, was, does once in a while in these kind of projects in rural county area, our SWCD is made aware of these too sometimes, because they do ravine stabilization projects and they have access to grants and things like that too. So were they aware of this at all? Do you know, our SWCD?
Not that I know of. I know the applicant had asked about cost share funding, and I just advised him that our office did not have anything, and I don't remember if we talked anything about the SWCD office or not.
Because I would encourage even having them still contact our SWCD to see if there's some ravine stabilization grant money available to help with the project to make it even better than what they've proposed possibly. I know over the years that there's been state and federal money available for ravine stabilization, and we've utilized that through our ag communities and things like that. I know Will's aware of some of those projects that have happened to slow down the speed of the water as it goes through the ravine. So, because my concern is that if it's a much larger area that's going to be drained, I'm concerned that it, even with the ravine stabilization that they proposed, we don't know that's going to happen now, and they're draining a larger area. And so that's the concern that I would have, being aware of the conditions of water and just all the different all the education I've had since being on the board, that we're increasing the drainage area than what had previously been there before.
Right, and staff would agree with your comments and concerns, and it's not a requirement in our ordinance that these projects be engineered, but because of the complexity of it all, we required that it be engineered as part of the conditional use permit.
Okay, yeah. Very good, very good. I'd be interested to hear how it turns out too.
Sure.
I might not be here, but like we just could just find out. Yeah, it'd be nice to find out, when it's done. So. Because I think we need to have more of, we've done a lot of these things, and we need more of them because we've got so many streams and rivers in our county. And of course that goes down into a nice park where we want to make sure that water quality is as best as it can be. I used to swim in that under the falls when I was a kid. So,
good concern, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. So any other comments? No. Okay. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks a lot, George. Thanks, Eric, for all your work on these things.
It's a lot of details that don't come out here at the board meeting level sometimes. So next we've got our Public Works Director and County Engineer, Ryan Tilges. He's got some action.
Morning.
Morning, Ryan. Thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time today.
Just a few.
Yep, I'll keep it short.
Okay.
We have just two bids for consideration. The first bid is on our County State Aid Highway 40. This is new box culvert 07J36. This is right on the South County line. It's an existing double wooden box culvert. It used to be a rectangle, and it's starting to turn into a parallelogram. We are concerned that it will collapse in the near future. So we do want to get it replaced. It could be eligible to sit on the bridge replacement waiting list, but as we've seen with our County Road 144 bridges, it took really effectively 3 construction seasons for those to finally get funding. I don't think we have that much time, so we're going to utilize our County State Aid Highway funds to replace this project. We had, again, a great list of bidders, and Bornicke Construction Company came in 12.4% underneath our engineer's estimate. Their low bid was $163,159. So I would recommend award to Bornicke Construction Company.
Move to approve. Second.
All right, we've got a motion for approval, and somewhere over here we've got a second. Be Mark or
Give it to Mark. I had the last one.
Okay. And then, of course, the question a lot of times we ask on these big things is, was there anything substantially different as far as what they're offering to do and the materials they're using? And
Pretty straightforward jobs. It's concrete box culverts and sand and gravel and excavators.
And we've utilized Bornicke Construction.
Yep, they just got the last two that we bid on County Road 144, so this was right down in the same neighborhood, so they'll probably be pursuing all three next spring at the same time.
Any other comments about this? Questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
All right, thank you.
Go on to the next bridge then.
Yep, next one is replacement of another bridge, a small box culvert on County Road 111 northwest of Lake Crystal. New bridge number 07J33. This is a very similar project. I believe the existing bridge is a concrete pipe right now. So we're replacing it with a box culvert. It, again, would be eligible, but it would be sitting on that waiting list for quite some time. We're utilizing our local funds to replace this, some of our local option sales tax and our county levy dollars, just to get the work done. As you may recall, we've got over 200 bridges, average lifespan 50 to 75 years apiece. That means we should be replacing 3 to 4 bridges annually. So this is 4 small box culverts that are listed as bridges on our system that we're getting replaced. 2 of them were funded with local money, and now these last 2 that I'm asking you for today are going to be utilizing our County State Aid Highway, our local funds. But I think it's important to keep these moving forward, and it gives us, we put them out into next year with the contractor having some flexibility of when they can move in and do them. They're a brief 2-week-long project, and then we've got a good farm-to-market connector completed. So we had 4 bids on this one. Oh, I'm sorry, more on the back. Yeah, lots of bids. Yeah, that's crazy. I almost got to take my shoes off to count that high. We had 8 bids. So there's a lot of appetite, and as you may recall, seeing the last bid and then the ones we had awarded 2 weeks ago on County Road 144, a lot of appetite, so we're very happy with the prices that we've seen. Low bid on this one was Midwest Contracting out of Marshall, Minnesota at $215,625. That's 3% underneath the engineer's estimate. So with that being said, I would recommend award to Midwest Contracting.
All right.
Move approval. Second.
We got a motion for approval for this bridge box culvert type bridge replacement from Commissioner Purvis and a second from Commissioner People. And also, this is a similar type of thing? It's
absolutely. Concrete box culverts on a gravel road.
And we've utilized Midwest Contracting?
We have. The last time we worked with them was quite some time ago. It was in the city of Lake Crystal on a similar box culvert replacement, I think on Humphrey Street, 2009 or 10. And they bid quite a bit of our work. They don't always get over this far, but when we're in that Lake Crystal vicinity, they do bid our projects and have had good experiences working with them.
Yeah. Well, very good. Is there any questions or comments then about this replacement?
With that many bidders, it's obviously that
There's appetite for this type of work, and
even
we do
they'll come a
offer.
little further because.
Yep, we try to offer flexibility in the time frame so that we're not locking them in. That gets us better pricing, and on a project like this, it's not highly disruptive. It's a good fit.
Yeah. Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion
Fantastic.
carries.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'll probably see you here at noon. And
TZD.
Yep, I'm heading back.
We're going to go down to TZD conference after our meeting this morning.
We will.
Brian, are you signed up for the Minnesota Transportation Alliance Annual?
Yes. Yep. Planning on
Thank
going
you.
to that as well.
And we'll have a short break right now, if that's all right.
Okay.
Welcome back to, from our break we just had. We'll be moving on to our next item of business on our agenda today. We've got our Human Services Director, Mr. Phil Clausen, here to give us a Human Services report for the month.
Morning, Bill.
Good morning.
Phil.
Morning, Phil.
Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you today. Thank you for your time hearing a few issues here from Human Services. Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I have actually two items, both from the Public Health Unit. And the first of those for action, the first of those being Department of Human Services contract, and it's for child and teen checkup. And you'll see in the description paragraph that the purpose of the contract is outreach services for children that are age birth through age 20 who are on medical assistance, and our staff ensures that the battery of health and medical services they need are provided. And we also look at barriers such as limited English proficiency, transportation, and other items that might get in the way of them receiving their medical care. This is a renewal. Our funding for this from DHS has gone up slightly to $175,933, which is a 1% increase from the previous contract. The term of the contract, January 1st of 19 through December 31st of 19. And then the second action item, also public health, is Greater Mankato Area United Way. This is our partnership agreement, so the funds aren't attached at this point because, as we know, United Way is in the middle of their fundraising campaign. We benefit greatly from United Way money for First Steps, home visiting, and early intervention. The terms of this partnership agreement are about the scope of services, the communication expectations, budgeting, budget changes, and other administrative pieces. It clarifies the responsibility of both agencies, and the term is January 1st of 19 through December 31st of 19, and those are the two action items that I have for you today.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion for approval from Commissioner Struenberg and a second from Commissioner Brunder. And then now we can open this up for some discussion or questions.
I don't have questions.
I don't have a question.
I always got a question.
Go ahead.
No, so the Department of Human Services gives us some money for these child and teen checkups. And do you know, I mean, you don't have to have the answer if you don't have it, but if just curious, do you know where the funding comes from?
Oh, that is a good question. I'm not sure if this is federal money or state money. I don't know if Bob would happen to know by any chance.
I think there might be a medical assistance component to it, but
So there might be some federal dollars.
Yeah,
involved.
very well
Yeah, because I saw that it's for people of low income.
That's right.
And so it probably includes some home visiting then too, doesn't it?
It sure could, and that second item where we can combine those services all within the public health unit, really does work kind of seamlessly. So yeah, if there's additional needs that we can reach out and further help family or family members in a lot of areas of our social services. This one in particular, I think they do really support the medical doctors, making sure that there's kind of these certain checks that they do on people that are low income. Here's what the DHS MDH is recommending, making sure they go through the whole protocol, and then there's money in it for them if they do satisfy those checks on the medical side. So it's kind of a clinic checklist, if you would.
And I bet they check for immunizations.
Exactly, all those. Yep.
Because they have a, what do you call that database? I can't think of the name of it, but there's a database
So this is through our public health or community health department we've got?
Right, for MTRAC, right, correct, yep.
And what's it called?
MTRAC, yes.
MTRAC.
Right.
And immunization tracking, I suppose?
Right, exactly, yeah.
And so Kelly Hayter's our supervisor, and then she's got
Right.
staff that deal directly with this.
Exactly right.
Okay. And then the Mankato Area United Way, those are home visits, aren't they?
Yeah, so those are absolutely the home visits, and Teresa's our staff who is over at the clinic, and we're actually bringing another staff over with Mankato Clinic side of it this year too, so we're really happy about that. Those are some of the things we have into the United Way, see how they can fund us to help us, but that's been a highly successful program, and there's lots of evidence-based data that getting in early and being right in the clinic setting and co-locating, just like how we have sheriff's detectives sitting with us, having some of our staff right in those clinics have really been a great fit for the community.
And I'm assuming this is also reaching out to families of that are kind of low income too?
Definitely, yep. So this one also targets anybody in need, and sometimes if there's special needs regarding the child or the mom, it might be a medical barrier, but if there's certainly when you look at poverty and getting access to certain services, those are the barriers we're trying to address. Yeah.
Okay.
And just knowledge, education of what's out there and other resources in the community.
Well, good. Sounds good to me. I'm glad they do it.
Absolutely. It's a good winners, yeah.
I know that when they look at public health dollars that are spent, every dollar that's spent, it's another dollar you're saving, sometimes up to $5 you're saving for every dollar spent. So it's really,
these are
depending what the programs are. They
right.
Really,
both areas, Commissioner, that I think really fit that show that the return on investment is just really good.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I have some informational and discussion items, some data sets from two areas of service in human services. The first one, adult services, focused a lot on our disability population, and you'll see your slide, the first one, 2017 data regarding our waivered services. There's a lot of acronyms in here. Some of them are defined, but I'd be glad to help with any of those that you want to know more about. The reason for the graphic is just to look at, though, the years 2015 through 17, and you'll see a trending when you look at total served, that every year we're going up in this area that you're all well aware of. This is an area of growth for us with staffing. Our caseloads continue to climb fairly dramatically in all of our waivered services. And remember, my working man's definition of waivered services is always that population that historically used to go to the nursing home, and now we're waiving the nursing home level of care and pushing them into the community and saying, what can we do to really serve them at a lower level of need and keep them in their homes or with family. So that's really our underlying mission for all these waivered services, and you'll see them listed there in the definitions. Towards the end of that first page, you see caseload sizes. So even in 2017, our caseload sizes in the disability services were around 57, and this year we're already up to 65. I know the board is considering some staffing in this area because of that growth. The next page is talking points, and I won't go over all of those, but that working definition you'll see in that very first bullet of just trying to keep people out of institutions in their own homes. Clients having ability to express themselves and direct their own care, what they want. The case management services we offer by wrapping around the individual and then helping to guide and also coordinate services beyond the social services direct care mission. The next slide, you'll see MnChoice's assessments. This also is something we've talked about for years now, but the increased need and intensity over these assessments that we do on these two populations. So these two areas that I'm going to go over, disability services and then the public health long-term care services, are very similar. This is under 65 with disabilities. The other one we're going to go over is public health age over 65. They're really a very similar service. It's just those two definitions. disability services, people with a disability under 65 go to Lynette Ayers in our social adult services unit. People over 65 go to public health, Kelly Hayter. This graphic, you'll see again, I'm really going after the big numbers, the totals for the board.
Which page is it?
Yep, I'm sorry, now I'm on disability services under 65 Min Choices assessments.
It's page 48, Commissioner.
Okay.
Thank you, I see it now.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I skipped some narrative there, but so now we're doing the assessments. That was the caseloads that we did in the first graphic, and now we're looking at these assessments, which have gotten a lot of airtime because they're taking a long time to do, and there's lots of them. And then for our community, we've talked about us being a hub community. We have a lot of people that come from outside of our area and live in facilities here in our area, foster care or whatever it might be. The change was now they're expecting counties like ours to do the assessments for those people where they're at. So they call it county of location. So we're the county of location, but out there somewhere is a county of financial responsibility that pays the freight on all the care. We have to do the assessment. So that's why our numbers have gone up so dramatically, yes.
So, I mean, we have a increase in assessments of over 200
right.
from 16 to 17.
It's a very striking.
The reason for that is because the state law changed and said where they're living now, that county has to do the assessments.
Right, and that actually has just started this year. There was a delay, so it's actually, we're going to see even a bigger bump up as we go forward. But this is pretty much growth, Commissioner. It's growth and us catching up with, as people cycled through, these are people that we knew. Already starting this year, which is confusing because this date is 2017, but in 18 we're already doing what you just said. We're starting to see that influx of new cases that are from those other counties.
And give me the reason that Blue Earth County is so inundated with this. Is it because of our population? Is it because of places like MRCI? And I mean, give me your assessment as to why we are getting hit with this more than maybe Nicollet County and Waseca County would be.
So the big answer, Commissioner, is corporate foster care, is that we have facilities that can take these people and they can stay there for the long haul. We also have corporate facilities because of the fact that we have such resources here, you know, the mall and shopping and services and medical, that a lot of smaller counties don't have, at least not to the level we have them. But the big one is where you have these foster care facilities, that's where these kind of epicenters are. The biggest one, even bigger than us, is Duluth, is another example. They have lots of providers, lots of foster homes, and they have lots of imports, dramatically more even than us. So I think our estimate now is in the 350 range, something like that, and we've already, so far this year, seen at least half of those come through. So, yeah, we're gearing up.
Do we have any data showing, like, what is the percentage of adult foster care special needs in Blue Earth County per population compared to maybe other counties around? Do we have that information?
We absolutely do, and I'll go back and check, Commissioner, I'll send it back to you. I think I presented that board sometime this year, but it's actually a pretty good graphic because it breaks out just what you say. How it does is it's when I brought licensing. So when we license homes, they have X amount of beds, and it shows how many are Blue Earth County beds and how many are other county beds, and that shows the data that you're looking for. So I'll resend that out to the board.
It's important for us to note this for the reason why our levy is going up. And because people say, well, why is Blue Earth County getting hit where maybe some of these other counties aren't? Where we have these issues, and they're not negative. Right. I'm not saying they're negative, but we have issues like this that we have to take care of that other counties don't.
Right, exactly right. And I can say from my chair too, in representing the interests of you as my board, that we've been very vocal about this concern. And how this plays out is right now as we speak, you know, it's really close to a wash that the revenues are pretty close to covering the staff. And we've analyzed that one way and the other. And depending on how you look at it, I mean, it's a slight margin, but I mean, there really is some decent revenue there right now. we're in a decent economy. We already saw last round that they did a 16% cut. So if we're on the hook for import counties, if you're tracking with me, and they keep cutting the rate, and in a down economy our rate gets cut, we're really going to be left holding the bag. And I say that in front of you publicly because I think there's no secret about how that math could work when those things start to change. So your concern has certainly been a concern that Bob and I have talked about quite a bit, and through our associations, it's one of our hottest topics right now. The problem is that it's really these mid-sized hub counties that have this issue. The bigs, they kind of wash through imports and exports, it doesn't matter. And the smalls, they're glad to kind of have us do their assessments for them and hold that liability risk. So when you look at the counties in general, I think we're a minority of people that are left with this concern. Okay. But it is a big concern, Commissioner, and you're articulating it well.
And what you're saying then is that, the dollars don't follow that from the state.
Absolutely.
It never seems to.
Right.
So, and it
that's right.
So our success is our problem, I guess.
Yes, exactly right.
At least with growth population.
We're attractive to have people come live here, that's a good thing, but there's this downside risk,
It's to articulate it in what makes this happen. And a lot of people don't understand that.
Right.
Why is Mankato and Blue Earth County getting hit with this where other counties aren't?
Right, exactly.
And,
at a smaller level, some of them do. It just isn't quite as big.
Yeah.
Right.
You go to any of our cities.
Thank you. Great question.
You answered my question. I really appreciate it. And if you could send me that.
I will send you that data. Yep, you bet.
It's always good to have that on hand when somebody hits you up with,
yes, it is.
Why is this happening?
Right, exactly.
So,
I have a quick comment.
Yes.
Question. On the new assessments, LTCC,
right,
long-term care?
Consultation, you nailed it, yep. Okay. So that's really the name of the assessment itself, but it's long-term care consultation.
And is that because we've been getting a lot more of these assisted care facilities and things that people want to see if they access some services?
Right, and really the LTCC is really the assessment itself, and at that point what they're saying is we don't know if somebody necessarily has a qualifying disability or if they need personal care attendant, which is PCA. So really that's the general assessment, and we'll see in public health too that anyone can ask for an assessment and we'll do that assessment. So sometimes you don't know. So that's kind of a catch-all of saying a gross number, you'll see it's the biggest number, that we go out and do the assessment. Now we might not be sure, or they might not be sure, do they have a qualifying disability? I'm turning 65 this year, what happens? Those kinds of questions are very complex. Back to Commissioner's question, how complex some of this is that, I need staff and supervisor consultation a lot of times when we get into the complexity of an individual case because of how the rules are still all written as far as how they fall in these different buckets.
So I'm just going to notice that in 2014 we had 211. 2017 we had 822 long-term care assessments, and I think that's because we have a slightly aging population.
There's certainly part of it.
If you count how many assisted care facilities we've got in the Mankato, North Mankato area, it's, since even the last 5 years we've added a couple more. So that's a growing population.
And I just think in very simple terms, we're not missing anybody. We used to miss a lot of folks, and they were, in the weeds out there, and maybe things were going okay, so we didn't do the assessment. Now the culture has been that we're going to assess all these folks, and that's why you see the reassessment. Put them on a cycle, and we're going to go through and check and recheck. It's really good quality. It takes a lot of horsepower to pull that mission off, and so you see these numbers jump, and you see our staffing jump because we need people to go do all these assessments. And that total at the very bottom of the reassessments, the reassessments are when they cycle back through again, that we do the next round of assessments, and you'll see that number is pretty much equal now to the new assessments. Totaling though 2,000 in a year, it's a ton of assessments in this area. I don't know how this came out in your slides, but the last 4 bullets after that, if we could just look, there's a definition of both what the first-time assessments, new assessments are, then reassessments, and then the time involved in the initial new assessment. This is another area that we've talked to the board about over the years now, but the new assessment is still between 7 and 9 hours to complete. That includes, some of the paperwork in that, and the next bullet is the reassessment is still taking 6 to 7 hours. Now again, I'll go back to my practice. When I was practicing as a psychologist, I could do a full diagnostic in probably an hour and a half. So I mean, this is a really big number for somebody that was trained the way I was, that you can really come out of the end of that diagnostic meeting and say, I can diagnose you now after an hour and a half meeting. And here we have something that's, almost 9-10 times that amount of time. So it is very thorough, I can say that. It is about some of this, when we tout the administrative simplification, is that there's so many programs that you have to ask questions for all the different eligibility pieces, trying to paint this picture. Where does this individual fit in this big menu of things out there? And that's why it takes so long. But it's a big amount of time. Just for my own way of looking at the world, I hope those numbers keep coming down. I just think that's an awful lot of resource per person, that it's going to be hard to sustain that. And then that last bullet is about these terms that we were kind of talking about as county of location, is where is that person actually living? So a lot of people live in Mankato, but they actually, and at the bottom you say CFR, the County of Financial Responsibility County, might be somebody far, far away. And so as you talk to your colleagues out of St. Louis County, you'll hear the same talk, probably even at a higher decibel than we're talking about. So, big issue. The next section there you'll see is really going to be similar, so side by side, if you will. Now we're talking about over 65, tipping towards now public health. So we first were in adult services, disability services, waivered services. Now we're in long-term care programs for people over 65 years of age. There's a split out in Kelly's programming, and for her staff, managed care programs, people that are under a managed care plan. You'll see that first definition talks about how we're the agency that are contracted through the health plans to do these assessments, and then again to do the ongoing case management. Right now in our community, we have Blue Plus, Medica, and UCare. And then you'll see if somebody's not on a managed care plan, home and community-based care programs. These are people that are not on managed care, who can still get the assessment for anyone that's over age 65 who requests a service. And then if they qualify, kind of that second line, they can also receive case management. So that's where the financial eligibility part comes in. If you're over 65, you can get an assessment as part of public health. And then if you qualify, you can also get case management. That's based on your income and your assets.
And these are medical assistance, which is Medicaid.
Right.
These are Medicaid assistance programs. In my mind, I have to say that.
That's exactly right.
So, and the question I got is they got Blue Plus, Medica, and UCare. Now, that whole thing is going to be relaxed at the end of the year, and they're going to allow other health providers to come into the state of Minnesota, which has never happened, I don't think, in a long time, has it?
So actually what's happening is every 5 years they do what they call is a procurement. So it's actually an RFP. Yeah. So I would describe that as, yes, they let the clutch out again and open the doors. Everyone comes in and bids, just like when we saw these bids from your contractors that do the bridge work. They come in, all the health plans come in and bid, and then they award bids per county. Now there's been some rub here, and we just had a meeting with DHS because historically, and Bob and I have both been in this trench, we can spend a lot of time kind of churning through all these. We get all that information, all private, confidential. They're submitting their best bids. We look at the bids and we get to give feedback. I know a few years back, there's only cycles every 5 years, so it might have been 2 cycles ago. But we did a big, met with all the supervisors, churned through it all. I think brought it to the board, got feedback, made a proposal, a recommendation to you all, put it in. We totally didn't get the people that we said. It felt like it had very little
tell
impact.
Us what to do then?
Well, they're the contractor, all fairness.
Yeah.
All I've said to DHS is just say what it is. We might, to me, what I will say to you as our board is it feels like we might have a 10% play in this process. It's not a big play. Yeah. And that's just the way it is. I don't know I'm looking at Bob and seeing if he feels differently because I'm just giving you an opinion. But it gets very frustrating and confusing if you don't go into it. it that way. So when you think that all this is going to come out to say this is a very important decision for our county, which it is, but we have very little control over the final decision, is my experience. So I don't know about it too. I'm just looking for some balance if I need it.
No, I would tend to agree. I think where the county board might be able to influence the decision is if you felt very strongly against one of the bidders.
Oh, I see.
You know, you might be able to influence the Department of Human Services in that regard. But if our desire is more for one vendor over another, I think the money's going to drive their decision more so than any local preference.
And I got
probably okay.
contacted by a gentleman from United Healthcare.
Yes.
So United Healthcare is pitching they're going to pitch.
Absolutely.
They'll be one of the ones pitching.
Right.
They're big. I think they're like one of the largest in the nation.
And they probably are. They don't have a big footprint here, but you're probably right. That's what they're trying to do. That's what they're trying to do. Yep, exactly.
I don't think they have one here.
Right.
In Minnesota.
I think it's small if they do. They might be in the cities,
So he was asking me questions. How do we vet these things, and what kind of influence do the health directors, health and human service directors, do they have a process where they give their feedback then to St. Paul when they're trying to vet these companies to see which one is good and healthy for Minnesota? And do they have preventative care in there at all? Do they have, the things that concern people? Because we know that if there's some preventative care provided, preventative educational care and things like that, that it's a 10 times return on the dollar.
Absolutely. And so all the prevention work in the public health mission is what we have really pushed in the past, along with things like mobile crisis, where the funding again got cut for us recently, and we're wondering, is there a way to stabilize that and almost say, hey, from a local voice, we think it's very important that we not set up a situation like we do with Yellow Line and then have the funding cut so that we can't even have a 24/7 response. And we kind of built it around that. If we had payers, third-party payers say, we'll come into your community, we'll be your health plan, and yes, we'll pay for mobile crisis, that would be a huge plus. I mean, kind of back to Bob's example.
Help back it up somehow.
Yes, if something you really want or something you really don't want, that would. And we had trouble. I mean, I know Blue Cross for a while was really struggling with some communications and other things, and that was very plainly said in this process. So we do. I mean, the answer to if we have a voice, we do. I don't think it's a majority voice, but I think we will definitely put in response. And you might get inquiries from the health plans because they're out kind of marketing their wares right now. And so I think we haven't yet, but we'll start getting them wanting to come chat with us as well and try to influence it in a positive way.
And their plan should reflect what you think is healthy for our southern Minnesota. Right. Because the face of southern Minnesota is the same pretty much, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But the question also I've got is there a way that you can influence? I mean, you go to MAXA, isn't it? And,
right.
And then
Micah too. Yep.
Micah
and
is there a voice there then that you say we love Blue Cross Blue Shield, or we love United Healthcare because they're bringing in something that's fresh and new and it's got these features. What is it? And I was just curious how do we know as a board what's going to happen, because whichever one's picked impacts our budget. As far as what we fill, don't we backfill some of those issues as far as the needs when we do services?
Well, I think the biggest impact is the revenue that comes back to the Human Service Department from those health plans. It doesn't impact us as much on the expense side.
Oh, it doesn't?
Not directly. I mean, there might be indirect if they're not covering certain things that falls back to Human Services, but really it is the revenue that I think is the greater impact.
Okay.
And so trying to address rates like where they're pathetic, to be assertive about that, we will be. And mobile is one of those where there's some funding for mobile, but the rates are pretty low, and so we can, kind of spotlight that and make.
And where is that, Phil? I'm just curious because I just heard through the grapevine that there's some funding at risk for our mobile crisis team. Did you know that, board?
Yeah.
I didn't know that, Phil. Sorry. Is that true?
Yeah, we just found out that it's been cut significantly, like $200,000 cut. And so we have, been talking to DHS about this. We've talked to Senator Rosen in particular because she was so supportive of this, and so I think there will be a hearing on it, but, you know, once DHS comes, it was an RFP, we asked for, I don't know, 800,000.
Yeah.
And we were at like 6, and we ended up with 4, you know.
Yeah, they gave us even less than we got the last time.
Half of what we requested.
And I will say, I mean, just, we've done a lot of looking into this, but I think what they did is they looked backwards, not forwards. They haven't looked at our growth and what we've done. They looked backwards at our previous application and used numbers from years back. And that makes no sense to me. So we have our feels in, but yes, it's important that you guys all know that. Definitely.
They didn't look at recent past, they looked at...
Not recent
They
past
couldn't
at
because
all. Ours is
it's
striking.
obvious.
We went from, 40 calls, like in a year from cops to like we had 4,000 contacts, just calls and churning of what's going on. So it's been dramatically up, but to me, you'd want to be smart about funding what's working. And they look.
So this is a law enforcement issue too, is what we're saying.
Definitely.
Because a lot of they're the ones that deal with a lot of these issues, and they all of a sudden realize, well, we're not equipped maybe to handle this situation. We need the mobile crisis team here to help us with this person.
But we know that if, we've said this before, and having law enforcement, sworn officers here on our board is that if we can't offer 24/7 coverage, if we can't be consistent, I think we only get a pass or two, and the cops move on. They just do. And so we can't be weak on our customer service from our side. That's what we're offering. So we're very concerned. I mean, we'll be forced, and this is that whole cost shifting issue, is be forced to make budget adjustments to make sure we can still do what we set out to do. But we got to rob Peter to pay Paul, and you guys know a lot about that whole cost shift issue.
So it's up to the board to decide philosophically if they want to kick in some more funding to keep the consistency going.
Or expect us to move money around, but I mean, it's things like the clubhouse, it's things like stakeholders meetings, things that we care very deeply about where the other funding goes, and to pick, it's like picking a child, which one do you love more?
But I'd appreciate you being honest with the board about it, Bill.
Absolutely.
And to present it as options, because the option is that we might need to add some funding.
Right. Horizon has been very good to us. They said, just so you know, Mr. Chair and all commissioners, that they've said, we're just going to figure this out. And, that's been Mike Pribble's stance on this, is we're in it together, and we're going to make it work. So I want you to know our provider has done an excellent job of customer service.
With Horizon Homes.
They're just great. So, I'll wrap up. These last two slides actually are both just about caseload counts, and you'll see growth. 18 obviously is an incomplete number, so that's going to be up again this year for public health. And I think the last slide is very similar. Just the very last part of the last slide has 864 as of October here, and 17 referrals came in this week. They come in floods. They never come in onesie-twosies. They come in groups of 17, I guess. So that's all I had for you today.
Thank you, Phil.
And
Thank you. Sobering.
Before we break, and I don't want to, I feel like my time is kind of limited. I got a couple months or so to be here on the board myself.
You're making up for it. Go ahead.
But if you could just bear with me for a minute, if it'd be all right, because it's just important to me, and I think to a lot of people. And you've heard me say it before. I'm sorry, but anything you can do, Phil, or your staff, or this board, when you're in a room somewhere with some decision makers, to further the professionalization of the PCA, personal care attendant role, which means that they get further training, and they get more professionalized, and they get more pay. Because right now, the starting pay for a PCA, I don't know, in this area is probably $10 an hour in Mankato. And you can go to any jail in southern Minnesota and start out with $17 to $19 an hour with no certification. CNAs in nursing homes, it's the same story, but they do get training. They get 60 to 80 hours of training, I believe, and they have to pass a state certification test. They start out at $10 an hour. They probably max out at $14 to $15 an hour. And we're talking, our jails start at $17 to $19 an hour. And so I think when we look at some of these care services for people, and you can include child care with this, if you want, to professionalize these people, because they're important to take care of other human beings,
And to get this, because a lot of the back, what would you call it, the backflash, or what do you call it, from not supporting these positions, because this is what this is all about, what you're talking about today. Those are the people that go out there when they're assessed and need help. When my family has somebody that needs help, or Vance's family, to have well-trained people, so the turnover isn't so great. Huge turnover. It's hard on that person that's getting the services, or on those people, when they have to refamiliarize themselves, when they themselves have some issues and they need to retrain each other and work with each other, and it's costing a lot more than we think in issues. Up in DHS, they're facing it. MDH is facing it with the state, with all these reports of maltreatment and neglect, and it relates to these positions. And I just want to get that out there. I know you guys understand.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, and I think you're on board. I know Vance is. I know that he gets it. Right, Vance, because you've been around the block on these things. But to get it out there, because we got to get the message out there, and I just want to ask for you to do that, Phil, if you could, when you can. But thanks for bringing all your things today, and I know the board appreciates hearing about this stuff and
Thank you for your time.
helping to educate us.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Phil. Have a good day.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay. So the next business we've got here is our administrative services with Bob Meyer, our county administrator.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, first item is county board minutes from October 9th.
So moved.
Second?
We've got a motion for approval and a second for our board minutes from, what'd you say was the 9th of October?
Yes.
Any discussion or changes? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the motion carries.
Next is item number 6, the Human Resources agenda. We just have informational items for the board today. We have filled a couple of library clerk positions down at the library. We also have filled an assistant county attorney in the county attorney's office. And item D is filling of a medium equipment operator in our public works department. We also have received a couple of resignations in this period, one a senior account clerk in human services, as well as a sergeant in the jail. Both of those are people that have had long-standing careers here and are leaving our agency as they kind of complete their careers. And so we've initiated recruitment to refill those positions, as well as the other positions listed there at the bottom. Those are all positions that will be vacated due to our early retirement incentive program. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board might have on those items.
It's good. Each one of those things symbolizes a lot of work people have to do, don't they, Bob?
Yes.
You don't think about that, but it's a lot of stuff they got to do.
Right. Then item number 7 in your packet is a drainage repair report. This is on County Ditch 27. It is a large repair. Estimated cost is upwards of $40,000. The work is to clean sediment from the ditch and install a slope bench area for future cleaning. And so we've selected Groundworks as the contractor to do that repair. So recommending approval today.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion from Commissioner Stuenberg and a second from Commissioner Purvis to move forward with the repairs on, I'm trying to see the number of the ditch on here.
It's 27.
27. It's just a section of open ditch, right? It just right along the road, kind of. Is there any more comments or questions about it? Nope. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, then item number 8 in your packet is an agreement between Blue Earth County and the City of Mankato for election services. This is for 2019. Section 12 in the agreement gets to the costs. Since 2019 is not a traditional election year, this agreement is primarily focused on those special election costs should we be subject to a special election. And so the $19,000 indicated there is up a little bit as our costs have increased as a result of some of the early voting or early absentee voting. And so those have been added. About a $2,000 increase has been included, I believe, in this agreement, and so recommending approval here today.
So moved.
Second.
So we've got a motion for approval from Commissioner Brunder and a second from Commissioner Stuenberg. And so this is something the city's fully aware of.
Yes, they've seen it. They have indicated their support for this, and so, yes, it's an agreement we've had in place. Obviously, the numbers have changed a little bit, but
the rest of it's pretty much the same, isn't it?
Right.
Okay.
How long is the agreement?
Predates me, so this particular agreement's just for 2019,
It's just for 19.
Just for the
we
1
have
year.
had these types of agreements in place for many years.
Well, it talks about based on the consumer price index for the duration.
Yeah, and that I think is kind of targeted at those more general election costs, but I believe Mike Stahlberger will be kind of working to revise this agreement more substantially into the future. I think we are seeing that our costs have increased as changes to the election cycle have occurred, and so we may need to kind of renegotiate this a little bit in future years.
It looks like it's about 7 pages long.
Yeah.
A lot of details there. What is that? A little details there.
There's a little joke there, that's all right.
And this includes the election judges' salaries and everything too, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, a piece of it, because they do the city portion.
Yeah, I think they actually pay the judges, but you're getting me off into an area where I should be a little careful. But
yeah, they do pay them. Yeah. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. So, anything else, Bob, that you had?
That's all the administrative items I have for you today.
Oh, anybody else have anything for the good of the order before we have a recess to the 2018 Towards Zero Death Conference down at the Verizon Wireless Center?
Well, we have our commissioners' reports.
Oh my goodness, I do this every time. I just forget about you guys completely. Look at Jesse laugh at me.
I was going to let it slide.
I was going to move it. We're going to move it.
We need to bypass it. Yeah, the only thing is you
Oh my goodness. Yeah, Mark and I had to go.
Vance wasn't looking at it.
Yeah, I was going to vote for it.
Yep, I was.
I got to start circling that last item down there, so I know I got to do it.
I'm the bad guy here.
Yeah, I want to get towards zero death. We got time. We got time.
Okay, let's go.
Okay. All right. So who would like to begin today?
Mine's relatively
Mr.
short.
Rudder?
I can start. Yeah. After our last board meeting, Will and I and Mark were all down in Winnebago area.
Oh, yeah.
The joint ditch with Martin and Faribault County, and it was kind of cumbersome, but I think it was good to get our boards together. We set up all of our joint ditches together, so it worked out really well, and about an hour, and now we're all set up and got that going forward, and didn't have any action items to do. We just got all the boards set up so we can do business later. And I think we determined that we're going to set the meetings by conference call or email, but we're going to meet in person when we're doing business. So just the group kind of agreed that was important, that if we're going to be spending the ditches money, we should all be in person and voting on it.
Okay.
Then I had a conference call with Micah. Everything's going really well up there. Mayors and clerks was a light showing because a couple of the commissioners were out of town and doing other things, but had it here in the city of Mankato. So Mayor Anderson kind of gave a little thank you for everybody for all the hard work mayors and clerks does. She got to host it. He enjoyed that. And then we had our board meeting at MVAC. Nothing really new to report there. Everything's going pretty well. Had to approve some child care stuff. Then we had the land use plan open house, actually it wasn't the open house, it was actually our meeting, our wrap-up meeting of the group. And there was only, I think we started with several, about 8 or 9 people from the group, but there was 3 of us there to finish up the group, and then all the staff, and we kind of went over everything that we've all talked about in the past and went through them one by one and what the objectives were going to be and what the outcome would be after, and then how to proceed with them in the future. So that was good for that group to get together and talk about all that. And then I had my State Emergency Communication Board conference call, and that was pretty non-eventful, just kind of an update from all of the board chairs. And that brings me to today, Mr. Chair.
Oh, okay. Well, good.
I can go next. Mine's relatively short.
All right, well.
As Kip mentioned, we had the joint ditch meeting down in Winnebago after our board meeting. Then mayors and clerks, he talked about that. You forgot County Ditch 51 meeting in Waseca County.
I did.
You and I were at that. We did a ditch cleaning, awarded a bid for ditch cleaning there. On the 17th, I went to St. James for the Watonwan River Watershed meeting. We're looking at asking for bids for a consultant to help us with that process. And then this morning, I stopped down and picked up my materials for the TZD conference.
Oh, sure.
So, and that's my report.
Okay. All right, Mark, would you like to be next? Okay.
Yep. Joint ditch with Kip and Will and Winnebago, and then after that, scooted back to Mankato and got on the bus to go to the our trip to Fayetteville, the Inner Cities Leadership visitation, and made it down there safely. And one of the big things we were tasked with actually is we're looking at exploring regional approaches to our economic growth and quality of life, and Fayetteville, and that was interesting because when we were looking for a plane or our flight number, we were kind of instinctively figuring Fayetteville. It's actually northwest or Arkansas, and even the gal there didn't know what it was for. Yeah. And that's partly why we were going down there, because with the Greater Mankato growth, we're looking at a regional approach to it. And so, but down there in Arkansas, they have a few. We have a lot of pluses, but they have, they have 3 Fortune 500 companies down there. You have Walmart, Tyson Foods, and J.B. Hunt Trucking. And I get like J.B. Hunt in trucking is about Vegas. But so they have a lot of employees, but they have a lot of resources. And I guess it comes to mind when it was the daughter of the Waltons that was big into art. And so she got her 3 other siblings, I think it was 4 of them, and they each put in $200 million apiece. It's like $800 million. I don't know, she might have had more, but $800 million for an art center, it was just crazy. Oh. Well, of course, they're buying art and stuff, but the point is there's a lot of money there.
It's like a museum.
And they built the Walmart, the Waltons built mainly the new airport they have out there. But anyway, it was really interesting. It is a land-grant college there, and they picked an area for us that was some of the similarities with us in terms of being a college community. And so they have the University of Arkansas there, the Razorbacks. And Vance could give the hog call. Yeah, hog call. Yeah.
Are you serious?
Oh, well, he was he was a good leader, and he had.
Really?
We actually did that, yeah.
Was it hard to learn it, or?
No.
Not if you're raised on a farm, or?
And I'm not going to give it.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
What's their mascot?
That's a Razorback.
Razorback?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the only one with a Razorback. But anyway,
wow.
Actually, it was a good trip. It was a little bit more. I think discussion got a little more. I don't know, it was heavy so much, but it was because where do we start? We really have to define a regional area that we're going to expand on, and that I think kind of became the bottom line is what we got to do.
Okay.
If we want to go it forward. A lot of your other leadership ones that other members have been at, they might have ended up like with moving more arts and making an arts community, things like that, or rural destinations for places like a chart.
So they highlighted that portion, didn't they?
Yeah, so here it was even bigger in that sense.
Yeah, yeah.
What we were looking for, so, yeah, it was worthwhile. And
What did they believe that their arts really did help their community?
well, this is in the past. I'm saying those things we've done.
They've done
like
them.
yeah, we've done that downtown in Mankato or the area and things like that. Whereas this is kind of takes a bigger, broader area, and it's going to take in more a bigger amount to chew, bite off a bigger amount. So, and of course, Vance he's got South Central Airport. Didn't think I'd remember, did you? Yeah, that was an idea. So it could be all part of it. Who knows? Anyway, that was a big thing. We got back then Friday evening. Oh, we don't want to get into our flights and stuff, but yeah, that's always fun when you're not on a direct flight back. Then on the 16th of October, I did speak to the Mankato Area Exchange Club. That's out at the Happy Shack. It's always fun. They always have me to give a little wrap up or what's happening with the county. And then October 17th did have RCF meeting, and Kip, of course, was on his trip, and we got into actually going to the RCF, our clients, and then we have one client that was there that helped with how they could keep their business going. October 19th, I got there late, but I did go to the Renee Howard retirement at the Law Enforcement Center, or Justice Center. And then Saturday, I did get involved with the volunteer. I don't like putting Christmas lights up myself, but I ended up volunteering for the
Kiwanis.
For the Kiwanis
holiday lights,
and the Partners of Affordable Housing. We had some volunteers there. I can do trees really well now, though, lights. And then let's see what here. Oh, yeah, we just had a finance meeting yesterday for the partners, and we're getting ready for our Hunger Week in November, the second week in November. So.
Okay.
There you go. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. That concludes my report.
All right, good. So,
Mr. Schoenberg.
Sure. I reiterate what Mark said. We had after our last meeting, we had our bus trip and then a plane flight to Fayetteville, Arkansas. We were, it seemed like the first day which was the next day, October 10th, they really pushed on their library, which was really a community center. And it's interesting how a few of our community people looked at me and Mark and thought, why isn't our library like this? And the thing is, I brought up an idea saying that's fine if you want to get the a private and partnership to help move it. Maybe we could take over the U.S. Post Office and actually have a community center in there, but the county's not going to do this. This is going to have to come from money from the outside. And there was some thought process, and we talked about the airport and us having the second busiest airport in the state of Minnesota. Actually we have the ability to have jets and land on our airport. We have that ability, and I brought the idea. This is obviously the airport's owned by the city of Mankato, but if we call it the South Central Airport instead of the Mankato Airport, it would give more of a regional idea to it instead of So that was another idea, but all in all, we had a good trip. 80 community members.
77, I think. Was that
77 or 80 community members from Mankato. Some of the biggest parts, especially for folks like Mark and I, is to get understand our business leaders. I mean, we had the leaders from the city of Mankato and the surrounding area that were there. And understand them, they understood us. They couldn't talk back and forth. If we see them, we can talk one-on-one. And everybody stood in the same level.
there was nobody up higher than anybody else. So it was a really good trip. Let's see, October, came back on the 12th, and that was an interesting thing. Like Mark said, we had some interesting flights, but that's, those things happen. October 16th, I had a Central Region call-in for NACO. October 17th, I had a TDS meeting for the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, where we gave some money out for the Heritage Fund to different libraries around the region. I had a Children's Museum Board meeting. On October 18th, I was in Wilmer for AMC Futures Local Government Workplace Symposium, and we toured the Midwest Technical Campus, which is the old state hospital in Wilmer. They are in the process of revamping all those old buildings and turning them into a workplace incubator. And there's many businesses that are out there already. It's really amazing to see what they did to that place and how they took those old historic buildings that were built back in the 1920s and 1930s and turned them into different business places. Really interesting. We spoke on very different businesses, and then we had a speaker from First Children's Finance, which specializes in child care facility and how to finance child care facilities across the state of Minnesota. So that was interesting. It really worked into what we do here in Mankato and worked into what the board does to help child care. We had an evening speaker from DigiKey Electronics out of Thief River Falls. DigiKey, I never knew how big they were. They started in the 70s with a few hundred square feet, and all they did was shipping electronics thing. They are in the process right now of building a 2 million square foot building in Thief River Falls. And they're looking for other places and stuff. And the speaker was kind of interesting because he was complaining that Thief River Falls Airport isn't large enough for jets and stuff like that. And so after it was all over with, I handed him my card. And I told him, we have an airport that's big enough for you, and we have land space that you could build. If you're looking at because all they do is ship. Yeah. They take orders and they ship. They don't really build anything. They bring, it's kind of like Amazon, but they're all their stuff is electronics. And he actually was somewhat interested because those big huge companies, they can do a lot, but they can't build airports. And they can't, move roads, and they can't do this. But so that was, we'll see if anything comes out of that. That was interesting. On the next day, on the 19th, we had a child care panel talking on different issues on child care, and we had a speaker on building a culture of employee engagement in government. So we talked about how leaders and government officials can get their employees to be part of the problems and stuff, and part of how we solve problems, and get more of a closer relationship. And that was the end of mine.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. It sounds like it was very stimulating.
It was.
A lot of planning and a lot of bigger picture issues like both of you.
That, along with our trip to Arkansas, there was a busy couple weeks.
Well, that's really good. Appreciate that. Let's move on to mine real quick. Mine's a little smaller than usual, the report. Let's see what time we got on my watch. It's okay.
We don't have a timekeeper today.
Yeah, I know. I've been kind of keeping time a little bit, but our last board meeting, of course, we had on October 9th, and we had our EDA meeting at that one, and we went to Charlie's afterwards for a good luncheon meeting. And then later on that day, I left, and I drove late in the day up to Cragun's, and I got out of here kind of late, so most of the time it was in the dark, and it was through rain the entire way. It rained that whole day. I don't know if you remember, but it rained quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I went up to we had our shack meeting the next morning before we start the statewide community health conference. So I'm the chair of that, and we had a very good meeting. A lot more attendees because half the people for the conference were already there. And so they were attending the shack meeting for our community health. And that evening we had the award ceremony, which kind of kicked off our conference. The next morning, of course, was October 11th. And this conference is a result of Minnesota Department of Health and the SHAC committee. And they do the planning, and that lasted Thursday, Friday, and into half the day on Friday. And of course, Commissioner Jan Malcolm addressed the conferees, and she's got extensive background working in not only healthcare issues and being on boards and foundations, dealing with public health and with health. Very good commissioner that we've got right now for the state of Minnesota. We also had a speaker, Jeff Linkenbach, and he's from Montana, of the Montana Institute. He's a research scientist, Dr. Jeff Linkenbach, and he looks towards working for social change. And that's a big issue because when you're talking about health and trying to do prevention, you know, and like I went, one of the breakout sessions I attended was called Family Home Visiting. It was using near science to address ACEs, and ACEs is that, you know, it's that, what do you call it?
Adverse childhood experience.
Thank you, adverse childhood experiences. Yeah, thanks. It's a big new word. I mean, everybody's talking about it, and how it impacts our future. But the thing about this workshop I went to, which was also something that Jeff talked about, was you can mitigate some of these social determinants of health by having positive experiences in that childhood's life. And I know that I see the nod of Pat McDermott's head, that a lot of us have had sometimes some ACE experiences. You know, we've had adverse childhood experiences. But why do some people have those impact their lives much deeper than others? And some of the research is suggesting that if you can incorporate positive, constructive, successful experiences in a person's life, it balances out some of those things so they don't take over and really drive you in a direction that's self-defeating. And so that was very interesting to hear from several sources that it creates a resilience in people that come from, you know, that have, it's almost like nurturing a garden. You know what I mean? You might have to add some fertilizer, you might have to till it a little bit more, but if you take care of it, maybe some soil that was kind of not taken care of when it was first started can be nurtured into being a very good healthy person and a happy person to add back to our culture and to be a part of our community in a meaningful way. And so sometimes we stop with just the ACEs, and this was looking at hope. We can provide hope for the future for a lot of the families and the children who have been through traumatic situations in their lives, which tends to shorten their lifespan, create roadblocks so that they aren't as successful with their lives, which eventually they start developing all kinds of health diseases of despair and drug addictions and all these things that Pat deals with when he's in his court system. So anyway, this Jeff Linkenbach was a great speaker too, to kind of wrap up our session. And I just wanted to, I'm proud of the fact that I was a part of it. I was the MC for the conference, and they had my little bio in here with yours truly, Commissioner Drew Campbell, and talked about my involvements with Minnesota Association of Counties, National Association of Counties, and my work at the St. Peter Security Hospital, and then also just my commitment to customer service and advocacy. And also I want to mention health and all policies, which came up at our conference. That's something you've been hearing from me, which I think you heard something about, Vance and Mark, when you went on your trip, is some of those issues. To consider how this impacts your region. It's a regional planning model, which is really public health. And it really can alleviate some of the problems that we deal with today, especially the counties deal with. Then I'll go on here. On Wednesday, October 17th, I went to West High School for our TZD work that we do, volunteer work, and I met with Annette Larson, who does a great job. And we had our Wheel of Distraction, which you might see that down here at TZD today. But so all the kids and the families are coming into West High School for the Red Wing game that they're playing against. And we talked to them a little bit about TZD issues. The Wheel of Distraction, like one of the examples I'll give you is, you can put on there what you're doing in the car, if you're eating or if you're listening to the radio or if you even just have a passenger. Just having a passenger in the car with you can increase your likelihood of having a car accident by 300%. Wow. And we don't think about that. And they're talking about distractions, in that realm of distractions. When you talk about texting, it goes up to like 2,000%. So, I mean, it's drastic. It might even be higher than that. I'm just giving you an example of what that wheel of distraction is. And, of course, we try to be a little bit humorous because I tell them we have a really cool wheel of distraction, you know. But anyway. So then radio station was there. Stump Monkey was there, you know. And BW3, Jen, she's been with BW3s forever and handing out coupons. Kind of make a little event out of it. Kind of like a kickoff to their game. Then I attended the Minnesota River Congress Spirit of Water Committee, and we worked on that on Saturday, planning for next year's, trying to do a celebration for Spirit of Water. And then last night I was inducted by our lieutenant for the Optimist Club for Minnesota, and he came in and welcomed some new members that we have and all of our officers, and I was elected president of the Optimist Club for Mankato. Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
So thank you.
Nice to know that you're going to be a leader even after you retire.
He's
We'll just come to you. We'll come to you. Yeah, and if you are a pessimist, it's good to get involved with the Optimist Club because then it can start to work on you and get that, you know, pessimism kind of worked out of you a little bit. So,
as the president, then, are you the glass is 3/4 full guy? Or?
Yeah.
Well, I really am. Yeah.
The rest of us are way below.
I'm learning how to do that.
I'm just happy there's some water in the glass.
So yeah, and on our minutes today, so far it would be Mark, I think, would take, let me see here, Mark, Kip only had like 2 minutes and 12 seconds.
Okay.
Will had 45 seconds, which you got the shortest. Mark had 6.
already talked about everything I did.
Well, and Vance, you were still a little bit under Mark, though. You were like 5.5 minutes, approximately. It's not bad.
Yeah, I thought I beat Mark out.
No. And I think
I do kind of follow Mark though. He's kind of my hero.
you actually took the lead today, Mark, which was really good. So thank you for doing that.
The Free Press wasn't here. I didn't find it.
No, but I think it's wonderful that I think that in this case, this is like this isn't like golfing. This is where you want to get the most minutes possible. What do you think, Bob?
All depends where you put it.
Pat? Okay. So
I move to recess.
all right, we're going to recess to Verizon Wireless Center for Towards Zero Death, and we plan on going to some of the conference if you have time, and then again tomorrow it's on. So if you want to pick up some. Okay, sounds good. Thank you.